Multilingual people, what is your "they didn't know I could understand their language" story? I speak French, but not completely fluently. Although I am a French/American citizen, I was at my first girlfriend's house for the first time eating dinner with them. We go upstairs afterwards, and her little sister, 2 grades below us, comes in as we are selecting a movie to watch. Well, they are Canadian and speak French at home a lot. The girl comes in and starts talking about how I am cute and so forth to her sister. And then her sister banters back about how she agrees and then turns to me and asks me in French if I agree. I responded in French that I appreciated it. Cue the bashful run up to her room. I lived off that high all year. That's cute. I hope you teased her about it, in French of course. My grandma could speak Arabic fluently. One time we are out and some women behind us in line are mocking her, calling her tacky, making fun of her bad dye job, etc. She turned around and said in Arabic, "I may be tacky, but at least I'm not stupid enough to assume nobody can understand me." They were so mortified. Oh snap, Grandma! Grandma's gonna get the wooden spoon! Working at a front desk with 2 coworkers who are related. They are speaking Spanish and one of them is talking about how she thinks I'm weird and act too professional all the time. She then asks, "Where's the stapler?" in Spanish. I picked up the stapler and without looking at her, I extend my arm to pass it. She then asks if I speak Spanish and understood the whole conversation. I told her I speak fluent Italian and took Spanish classes in school. Another story. At the mall eating McDonald's when I was a teenager, a bunch of old Italian guys hanging around the food court, and one asks, "How can he eat that crap?" in Italian, while looking at me. I look up and stare at him. I say, "Because I'm really hungry," in Italian. All his buddies started laughing. It's interesting how similar Italian and Spanish are. When I visited Rome a few years back, I had a long conversation with my taxi driver in English, Spanish, and Italian. When we couldn't understand one language or find the words, we would switch. It was a crazy experience, but I look back on it fondly. Well, probably because Italian and Spanish both come from Latin, and English uses a lot of Latin words. I was waiting in line with my sister to take a boat tour in California, and ahead of us was a group of 5 to 6 German-speaking people. The wait to board the boat was long, and they got to talking. At first, it was about how nice the weather was, and then it turned to how annoying Americans can be. Especially fat, dumb tourist Americans. They cracked a couple of jokes having to do with American stereotypes. While this was happening, the line started moving and people started boarding the boat, but the group was too wrapped up in their own jokes to realize it, so I finally turned around to them and in fluent German asked if they were part of the tour and if they were getting on the boat. They stopped dead in their joking tracks and said yes. So I replied that they had better get a move on because the dumb fat American tourist standing right behind them wanted to get on the boat too. They all looked really embarrassed. I've had very similar experiences. I'm Dutch. My wife is American. I don't sound even remotely Dutch when I speak American English anymore. The accent is gone after years of living in the US. We regularly encounter situations where Dutch people will trash talk Americans in our vicinity when we travel back to visit family. We'll order a salad somewhere and someone will say, "Oh look, the first Americans to ever order something healthy." I usually let them ramble for a while before shaming them by making it clear I do actually speak Dutch and am Dutch. It's amazing how people aren't ashamed and find themselves so funny until they are caught and then didn't mean it that way. I once had a very apparently wasted Englishman yell out to anyone who would listen that he found the only American with a passport while at a train station in Spain. The irony was that I was speaking in Spanish at the time to someone else, and he noticed the tag on my luggage that said USA. I truly do understand where stereotypes come from. I just dislike them a great deal. They don't apply to nearly as many people as they think. Not me, but my mom's friend. She and her aunt were on a bus. A very sickly-looking woman sat in front of them. They just started talking between themselves and said something along the lines of, "That lady looks like death." She turned around and in Polish said, "I have cancer." I'm Mexican, but I studied for my college degrees in the US. When I was studying abroad in Germany, I only spoke English to my German classmates. 4 months in, one time we were waiting for a train at a station and a group of young South American tourists were being loud and just waiting beside us. I could understand every word they were saying except for some slang, and they suddenly started talking crap about our group. I don't blame them at all, as we were just bored at the train station trying to pass the time, but I smile and look at them. One of the guys looks back and says in Spanish, "Do you not like what I'm saying, asshole?" I respond in Spanish, "It's been a long time since someone insulted me in my language." The guy has a speechless look on his face and all of his friends look at me. We have a laugh, and soon after that, both of our groups sat together and had a nice time talking. Their English was good enough to have a small chat with. I'm Japanese and live in Japan, but I went to college and law school in the States, so I'd like to think I speak fluent English. It's always pretty funny when foreigners realize I speak English because there are so many bilinguals in Tokyo that you'd think they'd learn by now that talking crap in English isn't going to be as discreet as they think. Anyways, I have two. One is pretty feel-good, and the other is a typical talking crap one. First is when I was drinking in a pretty small town in Niigata Prefecture. It's not known to get too many foreign visitors except in the winters when ski and snowboard season picks up. But this was in the spring, so I was actually quite surprised when I walk into the izakaya and a foreign couple is sitting at one of the tables. I was alone, so they seat me at the counter, and I order a couple of yakitori and sake. As I was waiting, I could hear the couple behind talking about how none of the things that came was what they ordered or expected, and that it is so difficult since no one seemed to speak English. Now, the izakaya we were at was like a hole in the wall, with no pictures, and the menu was handwritten in Japanese, so I could understand how difficult it would have been. Anyways, I come over, and to their delight, I translate the menu for them and help with their order. I ended up sitting and drinking with them that night and still messaging each other on Facebook. The second time isn't the same type of feel-good story. Anyways, I'm in a small city outside of the 23rd Ward, which has a pretty prominent language school, so there are a lot of foreigners in the area. I used to bartend when I was younger, and one of my coworkers from that time had opened a small barbecue restaurant in the area, so I decided to stop by and congratulate him. There were a couple of American guys, probably in their early 20s, just completely trashing this place, saying it's not authentic and that they did it better in Texas or wherever they're from. So after I had finished talking with my ex-coworker, I turn around and tell the two American men that if they wanted authentic barbecue, they should just go back home to America. No one is subjecting them to this restaurant. I love Japan. I was stationed in Atsugi for a few years, and learned some Japanese along the way. When we first check in, they give us these little phrase cards that you can just carry in your pocket. So one day I was trying to get past some people on the train to get off and started saying shirimasen instead of sumimasen, or I don't know instead of excuse me. I realized that as soon as I actually walked through the door and laughed at myself for quite some time. I just imagine the reverse of that, a Japanese guy fighting through a crowded train car in New York saying I don't know, over and over. Awesome. I don't know, you. Obviously. Everyone else, probably. I was in South America and had made friends with a guy who was living in Paraguay, but was originally from Jordan. He spoke 5 different languages. I asked him if he could help me out by buying a cell phone. So we are shopping around, we stop at one place with 2 Middle Eastern guys selling cell phones. They say some things in Spanish, then some things in Arabic, and my friend just says, let's go. I asked him what happened, and he said the guy said something in Arabic along the lines of, oh, we'll screw these guys over. To which my friend responded in Arabic, is that right? You're gonna screw us over? I thought it was really funny. I speak fluent Hungarian, and the thing about the language is it's so obscure that Hungarians will always assume when abroad that no one else can understand them. As you can imagine, this can backfire spectacularly as I grew up in the USA, and I've heard marital spats at Walmart that frankly never should have left the living room. Serious goodbyes between lovers that were awkward to hear. All sorts of things like that. The best story in the genre, though, is my mother's, when she and my dad were enjoying their first Christmas together. They were in a small village in Austria in the early 80s, and for Christmas Eve, when they went out to dinner, there was a man in the restaurant with a dog sitting at a table, like a guy putting food on a plate in front of his dog eating it, etc. My mom proceeded to spend a lot of time telling my dad how disgusting and unsanitary this was of the guy to do, etc. And when the guy and dog finished their meal, he just went up to my parents' table and said, "Merry Christmas," in Hungarian. Imagine if the dog said something in Hungarian too. I'm an American, but my dad and his family are from Switzerland, so I've had to learn some languages other than English if I want to keep up with my grandparents and cousins' conversations. I've got pretty poor with my French, but good enough that I can still listen in on other people's conversations. But I was never expecting to be able to use this skill or surprise anybody's secret conversation since I live in Texas. But lo and behold, one day I was out shopping with a couple of friends, one who also speaks French and German. I'm disabled from an accident that deformed my left leg. It's pretty obvious and people do tend to stare, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go around covered up in pants all the time. It's too damn hot here. At lunch, we overheard a mom talking with her son at the table next to us. The boy was about 7 or 8 years old and was totally fixated on my leg and the leg brace I wear. Just typical kid curiosity, and I was probably one of the few disabled people he's seen. The little boy was asking his mom what happened, why that girl's leg was all messed up, and why does she have to wear that brace? The mom then starts talking crap about Americans and tells the boy I probably lost it in the war while killing a bunch of helpless people. She then goes on about how Americans are unhealthy, dumb, and should stay out of other people's business. My friend had gotten up to go to the restroom and came back and just casually asked how the meal was in French. I answered her back, and the mom looked mortified as it dawned on her that I had heard the whole conversation. I wasn't rude, but I did take the opportunity to tell the boy who was legitimately concerned. I explained that I was injured in an accident, but I'd be okay. So I got to surprise someone by being a jerk, and got to show a little boy that disabled people are just regular people. So win-win. You deserve way more upvotes for being polite to her. I know love kills hate, but damn if it isn't tempting to fight fire with fire. I was touring some old dungeons in Germany. It was just me and my family and an older German couple. They were kinda dissing my country the whole time, thinking we couldn't understand them. We got to a room where they locked people by their feet, and the German man said to his wife and the tour guide in German, "This is where you should go if you can't speak German." I turned to him and in perfect German replied, "Then it's a good thing I can speak German." The look on his face was priceless. I sometimes get the idea Germans think that everyone in the world can understand German. Dutch guy in Germany asking a local. Tries to speak his best German and lots of pointing and gesturing. German guy in the Netherlands asking a local. Starts speaking in German, gets mad when not understood. It must be frustrating when you have two languages of similar origin. It's like you can kind of get the gist of what the other guy is saying, and it must seem easy to just switch your umlauts for double A's, but in the end, no one can understand each other. I'm not multilingual in this story, but this is a story as my friend told me. My friend's mom is from Vietnam, but her dad is from the States and is white. For whatever reason, my friend looks like a typical white brunette girl, but speaks Vietnamese with her mom's side of the family all the time and is fluent. So one day we got off school. We went to a Catholic high school and walked over to a nail salon a few blocks away to get our nails done. The ladies running the salon were speaking Vietnamese, and according to my friend, they were talking crap about us the entire time that we were there. They were talking about how rich we must be and how these little white girls can probably sleep with whoever they want and get ahead. I was completely oblivious to this the entire time. But as we were about to pay, my friend told me all of the terrible things they were saying, so we didn't tip them. We started to leave, and one of the workers said something about how the rich white girls couldn't even afford to tip. My friend turned around and yelled at them in perfect Vietnamese about how if they expect their business to stay open, they shouldn't talk badly about their customers in front of their faces. I didn't understand a word of it, but the workers were in utter shock and sheepishly apologized to both of us. I always assume someone speaking a different language in front of me is talking some sort of crap. I was at a party a couple of years ago, and there were these two really good-looking Asian girls. I started chatting one of them up, and we seemed to be having a good time. Anyways, the party keeps going, and we split momentarily. I grabbed myself a drink, and her friend came over to talk to her. I hear them speaking in Korean, and the one I was talking to was explaining how she thought I was really cute. Her friend starts talking in Korean. "That's not a good idea. Don't go after him. He's not that good-looking. He just wants to sleep with you, blah blah blah." The usual protecting your friend's line, which I have no problems with, minus the not good-looking part. Now at this point, I'm okay with that and just try to enjoy the party. However, later on, I overhear the same girl again speaking in Korean about how much of a lowlife I am, and I'm a horrible person with some added vulgar swear words. Remember, this person has never met me before today. She was basically describing me as if I was the enemy of all women. How I live in poverty and trying to label me as many negative things as she could think of. Obviously, the girl I was talking to is listening to her friend and is clearly no longer looking at me with interest. Before leaving the party, I go over to them and try asking for her number, just for craps, which she politely refuses to do. I turn to her friend and speak in perfect Korean. "Thanks so much for telling your friend about me. It was really nice getting to know you, and I'm glad you know so much about me even though we've never met before. I have a somewhat similar experience. This happened in Korea 3 days ago. I'm a Filipino who looks very much Korean. I was in Petite France, where two Filipino girls mistook me for a Korean. They asked me if I can take their picture and take a selfie with them after. I was listening to them talking about how good-looking I am. I couldn't help it, so I let out a chuckle. They stared at me as if wondering if I understood them. I then spoke in our language that I'm also Filipino and totally understood everything they said. We just laughed about it, and now I have two new friends. When I lived in China, I went to an international school, so would frequently use English with my classmates, even though I spoke and understood Chinese. One day, I was walking with a classmate when I overheard these old Chinese ladies talking about how it was obvious we were American because we were so fat. We were both average-sized, neither fat nor thin. My friend doesn't understand Chinese, so I decided to ignore it since we were just passing by. Later, we were at the fruit stand and the ladies come around looking to buy fruit. I'm standing in front of whatever they were trying to look at, and anytime they'd try to move around me, I'd shift subtly so they couldn't. I hear one of them start huffing about how she can't get by, and in Chinese, I respond with, I'd move, but as a fat American, it'd do no good. The ladies just looked at me, then I started laughing and were like, "Ooh, the fat American has good Chinese." No shame. Happened to me, actually. Really funny in hindsight. I was in Poland for a holiday with 2 friends. We went outside a bar to smoke, and I said to my friend in Dutch, "Those girls over there are really hot. Should we ask them to join us?" One of the girls turned around and said in almost perfect Dutch, "You won't find out if you don't ask." Cue my friends laughing and me standing there flabbergasted. "So did you ask?" Nah dude, I was all show back then, super insecure, and it was more of a joke to my friends than an actual plan. Canadian with an English group in a very French town in northern Quebec. The waitress crap-talked us, being Anglophones, the whole night to her coworkers and the bartender. She was doing it fairly loudly, which I found weird in bilingual country. When she came around with the bills, I put on my best accent and said in French, "I hope you aren't expecting a tip from these stupid English people because you are sure as hell not getting one," and told the group we were leaving. She chased us out of the restaurant screaming at us in French. I flipped her off and we left. I had the same thing happen to me, except it was in Moncton. Every single one of our party of 10 understood her but played dumb until the end. I was more offended by her stupidity in assuming that no one would understand her in a bilingual country's only at the time official bilingual city than her actual insults. We did this, but fortunately, it wasn't mean. My husband is American-born and raised, but grew up speaking German with his family. He wanted our kids to be bilingual, so speaks only German with them. My kids and I were at Chincoteague Island in Virginia, where a lot of Amish people like to vacation. We were in line at an ice cream parlor behind a group of about 20 Amish, including 7 to 18 girls. My daughter is used to speaking German to me as if it's a secret code, and said, "Look at what they're wearing, those dresses and bonnets. And look at their hair, so thick and shiny. They all look so pretty." The girls turned en masse and looked at her in surprise, which in turn surprised her, and I told her, "They clearly understood everything you just said." She looked embarrassed, then shrugged and answered that she didn't say anything she wouldn't have said to their faces. It was still a new experience for her. Getting complimented was probably a very positive experience for those Amish girls, especially in their native language. For once, their antiquated clothing wasn't a source of derision. Sounds like a good opportunity to make friends and get acquainted with their old German dialect, if anything. So I'm an American living in the United States and fluent in English. I did take Spanish in high school, and while I didn't really retain much, I can still take a pretty decent gander if I want to. I work in a landscape supply store, and most of my customers happen to be Hispanic. Sometimes they will talk to each other in Spanish while buying materials, and I can kind of get the gist of what they're saying. One time, 2 guys came in and started discussing what materials they were getting and how much. By the time they came up to me, I had already rung them up for what they had been talking about getting. They were really surprised that I understood them and tried talking to me in Spanish. I had to tell them that my Spanish was limited, so they tried teaching me a few new words while they finished their transaction. It was a nice time. I like these types of stories the most. I was on a subway car in Toronto when a French couple were chatting about innocuous crap when the husband starts chatting to his wife about what he wanted to do to her. It's graphic. He's going into detail about moves, holes, and smells. She had a toke in her hand, but unknowingly dropped it. So I saw my chance. I pick up her hat and tell her that she lost it. Both of their faces went white. She just meekly thanked me. I stood up, got off the subway, and felt a sense of glee at having ruined their evening. French in Toronto? Yeesh. I wouldn't assume any language is safe in Toronto, especially one of the official languages of the country. I think they had recently arrived and only assumed that it was a big Anglo city and didn't know that there were many of us who could speak fluent French. 2 English teens on holiday in France started calling people wankers, idiots, and many other interesting words. I asked them to start respecting people, and they turned red. In Prague, I asked a lady something in English, and her English was too poor for her to understand. I cannot speak Russian, but have learned a bit of it in Czech, and is pretty close. Her gran was with her, and the lady I was talking to said I was an idiot asking stupid questions. So I said in rough Russian, "I'm not an idiot. I'm sorry I cannot speak Czech." She went red too. In Catalonia, on a market, a seller spotted us as tourists immediately and tried to sell us his dried sausages more expensive than to the Catalan person before. I told him in Catalan that it's not fair to ask us French people to pay more. Reminds me of a Welsh father and daughter visiting Brittany. The innkeeper speaks in Breton about serving the Englishmen crap since they can't tell anyway. And the dad goes, "How dare you call me English?" in Welsh. Buddy had a similar in Poland. The comment was made in Polish along the lines of, "Freaking English wanker." To which my Irish buddy replied, in Polish, "Screw you, I'm an Irish wanker, not freaking English." He and the Pole ended up drinking together for the night, as the Pole insisted on buying him at least a couple of drinks. The family owned a business on a beach right outside of a French town. None of us spoke French, but a great friend of mine was French and came to work with us for years. One of the local townspeople came up to order fries to go, while their child walked into the candy/toy store part where my buddy was working. The kid asked for a toy in English, and the parent responded in French, "No, these are bad people. They take jobs from the community and won't hire locals." My buddy interrupted her and said no, that my family was great people and he did not appreciate her telling her kid flat-out lies, all in perfect French. The woman turned beet red and waited outside for her food. My buddy told my dad what happened, and before he got her food ready, he grabbed the stack of tapes that we had from local kids we hired stealing from us and even breaking in overnight. My dad offered her the tapes so that she could be queen gossip of the town, though he never would have given them to her, and explained very nicely how we had to bid on the business and have a business plan, and that there were 5 offers, 4 from the city and only 1 from the town, who only offered $12,000 for the building, equipment, and 3 acres of property it sits on. She was kind of shocked at how it all worked. We gave her the fries for free for the hassle of listening to us, but apparently she told the story and we started getting local business for the first time in over a decade. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a story you'd like to share, please do so in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos just like this one, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time!